My name is Valentina, and I'm 34 years old. That morning started like any other in our perfect suburban home. Marcus was in the shower, the kids were already at school, and I was enjoying my coffee when his phone rang. Thinking it was his boss about that urgent downtown project, I answered. A woman's voice whispered sensually, "You left your socks here again." Then she giggled. "I love you so much." I froze completely. I knew that voice. Before I reveal whose voice shattered my world into a million pieces, tell me where you're watching from. Please hit subscribe. If you've ever felt betrayal cut so deep, it changed everything you thought you knew about love and family. Marcus and I had what everyone called the perfect love story. We met at Northwestern University during our junior year. He was studying architecture, spending long nights in the studio creating beautiful buildings that would one day dot the Chicago skyline. I was pursuing marketing, dreaming of campaigns that would change the world. Our first encounter happened at a coffee shop near campus where we literally reached for the same last blueberry muffin. He insisted I take it, then asked if he could join me to share it. That simple gesture turned into a 4-hour conversation about everything from our favorite buildings in Chicago to our dreams of traveling through Europe. Our wedding 5 years later was like something from a magazine spread. We married at my family's estate in Connecticut, with 200 guests celebrating under string lights and autumn leaves. Marcus had designed a special archway, just for our ceremony, incorporating elements from both our families' heritage. My younger sister Natalie was my maid of honor, standing beside me in a dress I'd helped her choose, tears streaming down her face as she watched me marry the man of my dreams. She gave a speech that night about how Marcus wasn't just gaining a wife, but an entire family who already loved him. Everyone cried when she talked about how she'd always looked up to me and how Marcus was the brother she'd never had. We built our life carefully and deliberately in a suburb 40 minutes outside Chicago. Marcus joined a prestigious architecture firm as a junior partner, while I climbed the corporate ladder at a Fortune 500 company. Our first home was a modest 3-bedroom that Marcus renovated with his own hands, turning it into something special. 2 years into our marriage, Emma arrived, followed by Ryan 2 years later. The decision for me to stay home wasn't easy. I'd worked so hard for my career, but looking at those tiny faces, I knew where I needed to be. Marcus supported the decision completely, promising we were a team and that my sacrifice wouldn't be forgotten. 15 years into our marriage, life had settled into comfortable routines. Marcus had made full partner at his firm, designing buildings that won awards and brought in million-dollar contracts. Emma had just turned 12 and was showing promise as a swimmer, practicing every morning before school. Ryan at 10 had inherited his father's artistic eye and spent hours sketching everything he saw. Our home had upgraded to a 5-bedroom colonial with a pool and a kitchen I'd designed myself. From the outside, we were living the American dream. But perfection often hides cracks beneath its polished surface. About 6 months ago, Marcus started working late more frequently. He joined a gym, something he'd resisted for years, claiming the equipment at home was enough. New cologne appeared on his dresser, a scent I hadn't chosen. When I asked about it, he said a client had given it as a gift, and it would be rude not to use it. His phone, which used to lie carelessly around the house, now never left his side. He even started taking it into the bathroom during showers, placing it just outside on the counter. My sister Natalie had moved in with us temporarily 3 months ago after her divorce was finalized. Her husband had cheated with his secretary, a cliché so pathetic it would have been funny if it hadn't destroyed my sister. She arrived at our door with 2 suitcases and eyes swollen from crying. Without hesitation, we converted the basement into a comfortable apartment for her. The kids were thrilled to have their aunt around. She helped Emma with her algebra homework and taught Ryan advanced sketching techniques. She cooked elaborate dinners when I was tired, recipes our grandmother had taught us that I'd never quite mastered. Marcus seemed particularly appreciative of Natalie's presence. He praised her cooking constantly, sometimes making comments about how she'd inherited Grandma's gift while I'd gotten the business sense. They'd laugh over shared jokes from TV shows I didn't watch. She'd pour his coffee exactly how he liked it without asking. When I mentioned this, she said she'd noticed how he took it and wanted to be helpful since we were giving her a place to stay. It made perfect sense. She was my sister, grateful for our support, trying to contribute to the household. Family dinners became livelier with Natalie there. She and Marcus would debate architecture and art subjects that intersected in ways I hadn't realized. She'd studied art history in college before switching to interior design knowledge that fascinated Marcus. They'd spend hours discussing the Bauhaus movement or Frank Lloyd Wright's philosophy while I cleaned up or helped the kids with homework. Sometimes I'd find them on the patio, Marcus showing her his latest project plans, while she offered suggestions about interior flow and natural light. Her design eye was excellent, he said, and her input invaluable. There were moments that, looking back, should have raised flags. The time I came home early from book club to find them watching a movie in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch, but under the same blanket. Natalie's hand on Marcus's shoulder when he told a funny story at dinner, lingering just a second too long. The Saturday they went to the farmer's market together because I had Emma's swim meet returning 3 hours later with barely any groceries but matching coffee cups from a cafe. Marcus's phone lighting up with texts during dinner that made him smile in a way my messages hadn't in years. My mother called weekly, always commenting on how lucky I was to have such a supportive family. She'd say Marcus was the son she'd never had, and praise how well he treated both her daughters. She loved that Natalie was staying with us, believing sisters should support each other through difficult times. During Sunday dinners at my parents' house, she'd beam, watching Marcus help Natalie carry dishes or pour her wine, seeing it as brotherly affection. My father would clap Marcus on the back, thanking him for taking care of both his girls. The signs accumulated like dust so slowly you don't notice until suddenly everything is covered. Natalie wearing Marcus's college hoodie one morning, claiming she'd grabbed it from the laundry by mistake. The lipstick in Marcus's car that wasn't my shade, but could have been from a client. The receipt for 2 lunches at an upscale restaurant when Marcus claimed he'd been eating at his desk to meet deadlines. The family barbecue where they disappeared for a beer run that took an hour, returning with a story about traffic that didn't quite add up. His newfound interest in Natalie's therapy sessions, asking how they were going with genuine concern, I'd never seen him show for anyone's mental health before. After ending that phone call, my hands shook so violently I had to grip the counter to stay upright. The voice echoing in my mind wasn't some stranger, some random woman who'd fallen for my husband's charm. It was Natalie, my baby sister. The one I'd protected from bullies in elementary school, whose college tuition I'd helped pay when our parents couldn't afford it all, who'd stood beside me on my wedding day, promising she'd always have my back. Marcus emerged from the bathroom, steam following him as he toweled his hair. His expression was relaxed, normal, the face of a man without secrets. He asked casually who'd called, barely looking at me as he selected his tie from the closet. My mouth opened and closed twice before I managed to say wrong number, some woman looking for someone named David. He nodded absently, already mentally at his office, running through his day's meetings. I watched him dress with new eyes, noting things I'd missed. 3 parallel scratches on his back that couldn't have come from anything in our bed. Boxer briefs from a brand he'd never worn before. A hickey just below his collar line that he carefully covered with his shirt. His phone buzzed on the dresser. A text preview flashed before the screen went dark, but I caught the heart emoji. Marcus grabbed it quickly, checking the message with a soft smile that transformed his face into something younger, more alive than I'd seen in months. He typed a quick response, then mentioned casually that he might be late tonight, a client dinner that just got scheduled. The lie rolled off his tongue like water, smooth and natural. I nodded, playing the role of trusting wife while my insides churned with nausea and rage. Breakfast unfolded like a twisted play where everyone knew their lines except me. Or maybe I'd known them all along but refused to read the script. Emma talked about her upcoming swim competition while Ryan showed us his latest sketch. Marcus engaged with them lovingly, the perfect father, while I pushed eggs around my plate. Then Natalie arrived, breezing in through the back door with a cheerfulness that now seemed calculated. She wore Marcus's Northwestern hoodie, the one from his architecture program that I'd bought him for Christmas years ago. When I stared at it, she laughed, saying she'd found it in the laundry room and borrowed it because the basement got chilly at night. She moved around our kitchen with disturbing familiarity, knowing exactly where everything was, pouring Marcus's coffee without being asked, adding just the right amount of cream and sugar. Their fingers brushed during the handoff, a touch so brief anyone else would miss it. But I was watching now, really watching. She ruffled Ryan's hair, discussing his art project with genuine interest, then helped Emma pack her swim bag, reminding her about the extra goggles. My children adored her. She'd become woven into our family fabric so seamlessly, I hadn't noticed when she'd stopped being a guest and started being competition. Marcus suggested out of nowhere that I should visit Diana for the weekend. She'd mentioned opening a boutique spa in her lake house, and wouldn't it be nice for me to get away? Relax, have some girl time? Natalie immediately agreed, her enthusiasm just a shade too bright. I deserved a break, she said. I worked so hard taking care of everyone. She and Marcus could handle the kids no problem at all. They'd done it before when I'd visited our sick cousin in Milwaukee. The kids wouldn't even notice I was gone. The coordination of their suggestion was subtle but unmistakable, like dancers who'd practiced their routine too many times. Memory became my enemy, then bringing up moments I'd dismissed or rationalized. 2 months ago, finding Natalie's lipstick in Marcus's car and accepting her explanation that she'd borrowed the car to run errands. 6 weeks ago, the evening they'd gone to look at tile samples for her apartment renovation that never happened. A month ago, the Saturday morning, Marcus left early for golf, but came home freshly showered at noon. 3 weeks ago, Natalie's therapy appointment that supposedly ran late, but her therapist's office closed at 5 and she didn't return until 8. Last week, both of them missing from Emma's school play for 20 minutes, arriving separately with different excuses. My mother called while I stood frozen in the kitchen after everyone left. She wanted to confirm Sunday dinner, reminding me to bring my famous potato salad. She chatted about Natalie looking happier lately, how divorce was hard, but family support made everything bearable. She praised Marcus again for being so understanding, letting Natalie stay as long as she needed. The irony was suffocating. My mother's golden son-in-law, the man she'd practically adopted, was sleeping with her other daughter. The sister she'd raised me to protect was destroying my marriage from inside my own home. I made appropriate responses to my mother while my mind raced through possibilities. Confrontation felt too simple, too easy. They'd deny it, gaslight me, make me seem paranoid. I needed proof, concrete evidence that couldn't be explained away or twisted. The investigator in me, dormant since I'd left the corporate world, suddenly awakened. If Marcus and Natalie wanted to play games in my house with my children as unwitting pawns, they'd learn I wasn't just a suburban housewife. I was the woman who'd graduated summa cum laude, who'd landed million-dollar accounts, who'd built the very life they were trying to steal. Paranoia and clarity battled in my mind as I moved through my day. Every text could be them. Every hour they overlapped away from me could be a rendezvous. The gym. Marcus went to early mornings. Was Natalie meeting him there? The therapy sessions she attended twice weekly. Were they real or excuses? Her interior design clients she met with, did they exist? His late meetings with clients. How many were legitimate? The business trips he took monthly. Had she accompanied him? The weekend I'd spent at my college reunion 2 months ago, had they played house with my children? I wanted to scream, to rage, to burn everything down immediately. But I forced myself to breathe, to think strategically. Emotional decisions led to poor outcomes. I needed to be smart, methodical, thorough. They thought they were clever, carrying on their affair under my nose, probably thrilled by the danger and deception. They underestimated me, seeing only the tired mother, the trusting wife, the supportive sister. They forgot that before I'd become those things, I'd been formidable, and I was about to remind them why. After dropping Emma and Ryan at school, I returned to our empty house with singular purpose. Marcus's home office had always been his sanctuary, a place I rarely entered out of respect for his work. That respect died the moment I'd recognized Natalie's voice. His desk was meticulously organized, everything in its designated place, a reflection of his architectural mind. But organization made secrets easier to find if you knew where to look. The locked drawer that supposedly held sensitive client information opened easily with the key he kept hidden under his baseball trophy. Inside credit card statements he'd never shown me revealed a pattern of deceptions spanning months. Charges at restaurants during lunch hours when he'd claimed to eat at his desk. A jewelry store purchase from last month, $3,000 for something I'd never received. Hotel charges at the Marriott downtown on days he'd said he was at conferences in the suburbs. Weekend charges at a bed and breakfast 2 hours north during my visit to my college roommate. Each discovery was a knife wound, but I documented everything with my phone, creating a digital trail of evidence. His laptop password, protected with our anniversary date, yielded more treasures. Browser history showed apartment listings downtown modern lofts, with river views saved in a folder titled Future Projects. But the metadata showed Natalie had been the one browsing them on his computer. Email drafts never sent discussed timing, waiting for the right moment, letting me down easy. One draft mentioned how the kids would adjust better if Natalie was already a constant in their lives. The basement apartment Natalie occupied felt different now, sinister instead of safe. Her design sketches covered one wall, but looking closely I recognized our house in many of them, reimagined with different furniture, different colors, my presence erased and replaced with her aesthetic. In her dresser drawer beneath carefully folded sweaters, Marcus's missing cufflinks gleamed in their monogrammed box, the ones I'd given him for our 10th anniversary. His favorite architecture book lay on her nightstand, an inscription in his handwriting reading, "To my muse who sees beauty in everything, especially us." A photo from our family vacation to Disney last summer sat framed on her desk, but someone had carefully cut it. The slice was precise surgical, leaving Marcus and the kids intact, while removing most of me. Only my hand remained on Ryan's shoulder, a ghostly reminder of my presence. The symbolism was so heavy-handed, it would have been laughable if it weren't my life being edited. Beneath the photo, a notebook contained her handwriting practicing signatures. Natalie Coleman, Marcus's last name, replacing her maiden name over and over like a teenage girl with a crush. Technology became my weapon. During lunch, when Marcus always called to check in, I installed a tracking app on his phone while he was in the bathroom. The app, designed for parents to monitor teenagers, was invisible once installed. His location, his messages, his calls would all flow to my phone. Modern problems required modern solutions. Within hours, I watched him lie in real time, his location showing him at a restaurant downtown, while he texted about being stuck in a client meeting. Natalie's Instagram, which she thought was private, showed her at the same location a selfie with a coffee cup that matched the one visible in Marcus's location photos. Their digital footprints were surprisingly sloppy for people trying to hide an affair. Or maybe they'd grown comfortable, confident in my ignorance. The shared calendar app we used for family scheduling showed patterns when overlaid with their individual schedules. Every Thursday for 3 months, Marcus had client meetings that ran late, while Natalie had therapy appointments. But cross-referencing with the credit card statements showed charges at the same hotel on those Thursdays. They hadn't even bothered using cash, so certain I'd never look. The iPad we kept in the kitchen, supposedly for recipes, and the kids' homework held the mother load. In the email app, hidden in a folder marked Spam, 2 Gmail accounts had been logged in. Marcus loves Gmail and Nat forever. Yours at Gmail. Contained 3 months of love letters that made me physically ill. Marcus wrote about how she understood his creative soul in ways I never could. Natalie described the guilt eating her alive, but how their love was worth any pain. They discussed timelines for revealing their relationship after the divorce was final, after I'd moved out of the house I'd designed, after they'd given the kids time to adjust to their new normal. One email thread discussed my flaws in detail. How I'd let myself go after the kids, though I still wore the same size. How I didn't appreciate Marcus's architectural genius, though I'd supported him through every project. How I was cold and controlling, though I'd given up my career for our family. Natalie wrote about how she'd loved him since our wedding day, watching him pledge himself to the wrong sister. Marcus replied that he'd noticed her then too. So young and beautiful and full of life, everything I'd eventually lose. They'd rewritten our entire history, casting themselves as star-crossed lovers kept apart by circumstance rather than betrayers destroying a family. Their plans were comprehensive. Natalie would get pregnant accidentally, forcing the issue. Marcus would ask for a divorce, citing growing apart. They'd already researched lawyers' custody arrangements, how to minimize alimony. Natalie had been documenting my unstable behavior, twisting normal frustrations into evidence of an unfit mother. Times I'd raised my voice at the kids became rage issues. The wine I drank with dinner became alcohol dependency. My book club nights became abandonment of family duties. They were building a case against me while sleeping in my house, eating my food, smiling at my children. I called Diana first, needing an anchor before I drowned. She listened without interrupting as I laid out the evidence, her sharp intake of breath the only sign of her shock. When I finished, she gave me her husband's best friend's number, a divorce attorney who specialized in high-asset cases with infidelity. She also offered her lake house immediately, a safe space when I needed it. Her loyalty was immediate and absolute, reminding me that real family wasn't always blood. The lawyer Anthony Delacroix took my call immediately on Diana's recommendation. His voice was calm, professional, but with an edge that suggested he'd seen this scenario too many times. He advised me to document everything, secure finances, and avoid confrontation until we had a strategy. He could see me tomorrow morning, but in the meantime, I should move half our liquid assets to a separate account, gather all important documents, and continue normal routines. The game had changed, but they didn't know I'd joined yet. My estranged brother James answered on the third ring, surprise evident in his voice. We hadn't spoken in 5 years, not since the fight over our father's will that split the family. But when I explained the situation, his protective instinct overrode our issues. As a private investigator, he had resources I needed. He agreed to tail Marcus and Natalie immediately to gather photographic evidence that would be undeniable in court. Blood might not always be trustworthy, but it understood revenge. That afternoon, while the kids were still at school and Marcus at work, Natalie returned home early. I heard her on the phone in the basement, Marcus's voice carrying through the vents. They were discussing weekend plans, how to get me out of the house again. She suggested another spa weekend, or maybe visiting my cousin in Milwaukee. He worried I was getting suspicious, mentioned I'd seemed off at breakfast. She assured him I was just tired, overwhelmed with the kids' schedules, too trusting to suspect anything. They ended the call with "I love yous" that made me grip the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. James worked quickly, his professional expertise worth our 5-year silence. Within 2 days, he had photographs that would destroy any denial attempts. Marcus and Natalie entering the Ritz-Carlton downtown, his hand on her lower back possessively. Security footage he'd somehow obtained showed them kissing passionately in the elevator. Photos through a hotel window long lens, capturing them in bed, leaving nothing to imagination or interpretation. License plate readers tracked Marcus's car to Natalie's supposed therapy appointments, parked at her therapist's building, but entering the apartment complex next door. The financial documentation Anthony requested revealed more deception. Marcus had opened accounts I didn't know existed, slowly siphoning money from our joint investments. Nothing dramatic enough to notice, just steady withdrawals labeled as business expenses. Over 6 months, he'd moved $40,000. The apartment listings weren't just browsing, he'd put deposits on 2 properties, both in his name only. He'd been planning his exit strategy while I planned our summer vacation. I met with Anthony in his downtown office, all glass and steel, that reminded me of the corporate world I'd left. He reviewed everything with the detachment of a surgeon, occasionally making notes or asking clarifying questions. The evidence was overwhelming, he said. Adultery, financial fraud, emotional abuse through gaslighting. Illinois was a no-fault state, but judges still considered behavior in custody and asset division. Marcus had handed us ammunition, and Natalie, being my sister, added another layer of betrayal judges would note. We crafted a strategy that was both defensive and offensive. I would continue playing oblivious while securing everything important. Children's passports, birth certificates, social security cards, all moved to a safety deposit box. Valuable jewelry, family heirlooms, anything sentimental relocated to Diana's house. The tracking app on Marcus's phone would continue documenting his lies. James would maintain surveillance, building an undeniable pattern of deception. When we struck, it would be decisive and complete. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy at home. Sitting across from Marcus at dinner, listening to him discuss his day while knowing he'd spent lunch in a hotel with my sister. Helping Natalie fold laundry, including the lingerie I now knew she wore for him. Watching them interact with the kids, uncle and aunt, playing their roles while planning to replace me as mother. Emma mentioned how lucky she was to have such a cool aunt, and I bit my tongue until it bled. Ryan showed Natalie his art, and she praised him with genuine affection that made everything worse. One evening, Marcus worked late, legitimately, a client emergency requiring actual presence. Natalie and I were alone after the kids went to bed, sharing wine on the patio like we'd done countless times. She started crying suddenly, supposedly about her divorce, how betrayal from someone you trusted destroyed your foundation. The irony was so thick, I nearly choked on my wine. She talked about moving forward, finding happiness again, maybe even finding love when she least expected it. Her eyes sparkled with secrets she thought I'd never discover. She asked about Marcus and me, if we were happy, if the spark remained after 15 years. I played my part, expressing normal marital frustrations, nothing serious, just the usual staleness that came with routine. She listened sympathetically, suggested maybe we needed to spice things up, try new things, remember why we fell in love. Her advice was poison wrapped in concern, designed to make me blame myself when Marcus asked for divorce. I agreed with everything, let her think her manipulation was working while mentally adding her performance to my evidence file. Ruth, my mother's sister, called unexpectedly one evening. She'd always been the family outlier, too blunt for comfort, too observant for secrets. She asked pointed questions about Natalie's living situation, how long she planned to stay, whether it was healthy for everyone involved. When I gave standard responses, she pushed harder. She'd noticed things at Christmas, she said. The way Marcus and Natalie looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. How they disappeared together during present opening, returning separately with weak excuses. She wasn't accusing, just observing, but family loyalty meant warning me. I thanked her carefully, neither confirming nor denying, but filed her as an ally for later. My children, innocent in all this, became my strength and weakness. Emma confided that Dad seemed happier lately, more fun, more present. It hurt knowing his affair energized him, made him a better father through guilt or excitement. Ryan mentioned Aunt Natalie had been helping him with a special art project, something about family portraits that would be a surprise. I wondered if he was unconsciously drawing our family's future, one where Natalie stood where I should be. Their love for both betrayers complicated everything, made the coming explosion more dangerous. The evidence mounted daily. Credit card charges for lingerie in Natalie's size. Restaurant reservations for 2 under Marcus's name when I was supposedly included. Pharmacy charges for birth control pills when I'd had my tubes tied after Ryan. Phone records showing hundreds of texts between them, calls lasting hours when they were supposedly in different places. James documented afternoon rendezvous, morning gym sessions that were actually hotel visits, weekend errands that took suspicious detours. They were getting sloppier, more brazen, convinced their secret was safe. Anthony prepared divorce papers with surgical precision. Primary custody with supervised visitation until Marcus's judgment could be evaluated. 70% of assets based on financial fraud and marital misconduct. The house remained mine and the children's. Alimony calculated on his actual income, not what he claimed after hiding money. Restraining orders preventing him from removing anything from the house or accessing certain accounts. The papers were a weapon waiting to be deployed at maximum impact. Sunday dinner at my parents' house was a monthly tradition encompassing the entire extended family. 23 relatives gathered around tables that spilled from the dining room into the living room. Cousins from California were visiting, adding to the chaos. My parents' house, a sprawling Victorian they'd restored over decades, hummed with conversation and laughter. It was the perfect stage for what I'd planned. I arrived deliberately late with a carved wooden box nobody recognized. Marcus and Natalie were already there, strategically seated at opposite ends of the main table, as if distance proved innocence. My mother fussed over my appearance, saying I looked tired, worn down. She suggested maybe I needed vitamins or hormone therapy. Her concern genuine but misguided. My father hugged me longer than usual, his intuition sensing something his consciousness couldn't identify. The meal progressed normally at first. Uncle Tony regaled everyone with stories from his Marine days. Cousin Lisa discussed her latest case as a federal judge. Aunt Ruth watched everything with hawk eyes, occasionally catching my gaze with knowing looks. The children ran between courses, playing with their second cousins, blissfully unaware of the bomb about to detonate. Marcus performed perfectly, the devoted husband helping serve, complimenting my mother's cooking, discussing the bear's chances with my father. Natalie was equally convincing, the grateful sister recovering from divorce, helping with dishes, entertaining the elderly relatives with stories. After dessert, when everyone was relaxed and slightly wine-drowsy, I suggested a family game. Something new I'd found online called Truth or Memories, where family members shared stories about trust, loyalty, and love. Everyone agreed, gathering in the living room with fresh drinks and leftover pie. I started innocently telling the story of how our grandmother had discovered our grandfather's brief affair through a lipstick stain and forgave him, keeping the family together. The older relatives nodded, remembering the scandal that had almost destroyed everything. I guided the conversation toward trust between siblings, how sacred that bond should be, how betrayal between sisters was particularly heinous. Natalie shifted uncomfortably but maintained her smile. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I told another story, this one about a woman who discovered her husband's infidelity through a phone call, how the voice on the other end had been familial. The room grew quieter, tension building like electricity before lightning. Then I opened the wooden box. Inside was my tablet, already connected to the smart TV my parents had installed last Christmas. The screen mirrored immediately, showing a folder labeled Family Truths. I clicked play on the first file, security footage from the Ritz-Carlton. The room gasped collectively as Marcus and Natalie entered the frame, kissing passionately in the elevator. My mother's wineglass shattered on the hardwood floor. My father stood abruptly, his face shifting from confusion to rage. The second file was audio, the phone call from that morning a week ago. Natalie's voice filled the room, talking about socks, saying, "I love you," to my husband. The third file showed photographs, James's surveillance compiled into a devastating slideshow. Hotel entrances, intimate lunches, them entering Natalie's therapy building, but going to the adjacent apartment complex. Each image was time-stamped, located, undeniable. Marcus shot to his feet, trying to speak, but Uncle Tony, 70 years old but still built like a Marine, blocked his path to the door. Natalie collapsed into tears, not beautiful dramatic tears, but ugly, snotty sobbing that made her mascara run in black rivers. She tried to explain, to justify, but Cousin Lisa, the federal judge, told her to remain silent, that anything she said would only make things worse. My mother had to be helped to a chair, my father supporting her while staring at Marcus with murderous intent. The children were quickly shepherded to the backyard by the California cousins, who sensed disaster without understanding its shape. Emma looked back at me, once her 12-year-old face processing that something fundamental had shifted. I'd explain later, age appropriately, but for now, distance was mercy. Ryan followed his sister, clutching his sketchpad like a shield against adult chaos. I stood in the center of the storm, calm as its eye. From the wooden box, I withdrew the divorce papers and handed them to Marcus. Anthony had arranged for official service, but this was more satisfying. I told everyone how they'd been planning to replace me, how they'd documented false evidence of my instability, how they'd stolen money and looked at apartments. I showed emails on the tablet, their own words, condemning them more effectively than any accusation. Aunt Ruth announced she'd suspected something was wrong and had already arranged a moving truck for Marcus's belongings. It would arrive at our house tomorrow morning. Everything would be packed and placed in storage. The locks had already been changed while we were at dinner, a locksmith she knew handling everything. She'd taken the liberty of hiring security cameras installed that afternoon, so any attempt to return would be recorded. James emerged from the kitchen where he'd been waiting, introducing himself to the family after our 5-year absence. He explained his investigation, how extensive their affair had been, how much evidence he'd compiled. He'd also discovered Natalie had never actually been divorced. Her husband had left her, yes, but for legitimate reasons, her serial infidelity with multiple partners. The divorce papers she'd claimed to have signed were forgeries. She was still legally married while sleeping with Marcus. My father, quiet through most of the revelation, finally spoke. His voice was controlled but devastating, disowning Natalie completely. She was no longer welcome in his home, no longer his daughter. The family she'd betrayed for lust was the family she'd lost forever. My mother recovered enough to stand, slapped Marcus across the face with enough force to leave a perfect handprint. Then she slapped Natalie harder, years of maternal love transformed into maternal rage. Marcus tried one last manipulation, claiming I'd driven him to it, that I was cold, unaffectionate, focused only on the children. Cousin Lisa laughed, actually laughed, and informed him that adultery was adultery, regardless of justification. Uncle Tony added that real men handled marital problems with communication, not by sleeping with their sister-in-law. The complete lack of sympathy from anyone broke something in Marcus. His carefully constructed image crumbled, revealing the weak, selfish man beneath the architect's facade. Natalie exploded, then screaming that I'd always been the favorite, always gotten everything. The better education, the better husband, the better life. She'd loved Marcus first, she claimed, from the moment she'd met him. I'd stolen him by being older, by being there first. Her rant was unhinged, years of resentment erupting like infected wound finally lanced. She accused me of flaunting my perfect life, making her feel inferior, driving her to take what should have been hers. I responded calmly that she was right about one thing. I had gotten the better life, but I'd built it through work, sacrifice, and loyalty. I'd earned my education through scholarships and night jobs. I'd supported Marcus through lean years before his success. I'd given up my career for our children. Everything I had came from choices and commitment, not from stealing or betrayal. And now she'd lost everything for choices, two just different ones. The family unanimously supported me. Offers of money, housing, childcare, whatever I needed poured in. The cousins from California, both lawyers, offered to help Anthony pro bono. Uncle Tony volunteered to supervise Marcus's move out, ensuring he took only what was legally his. Aunt Ruth had already contacted her therapist friend who specialized in children of divorce, booking appointments for Emma and Ryan. Even relatives who rarely spoke aligned against the betrayers. Marcus was escorted out by James and Uncle Tony, told to find a hotel and not return to the house. His car keys were taken, James driving him to ensure he actually left. Natalie tried to follow, but my mother blocked her path. She had 30 minutes to pack essentials from the basement, supervised by Aunt Ruth and Cousin Lisa. After that, she was never to contact any of us again. If she attempted to see the children, restraining orders would be filed. If she contested anything, her bigamy would be reported to authorities. As Natalie gathered her things, she tried one last manipulation, tears streaming as she begged for forgiveness. She invoked our childhood shared memories, sisterly bonds, but I felt nothing except cold satisfaction. She'd made her choices every day for months, each lie, each deception, each moment in my husband's bed. Forgiveness might come someday, years distant, but tonight, she was just the woman who'd destroyed everything sacred for selfish pleasure. The dinner ended with family rallying around me and the children. Plans were made for immediate support. Schedules arranged for helping with school runs, meal preparations, homework supervision. My support system, tested by extreme circumstances, had proven unbreakable. Marcus and Natalie had underestimated not just me but the family they'd betrayed. They'd thought blood bonds would protect them, but they'd learned that loyalty earned through respect was stronger than DNA. That night, Marcus went to a hotel but didn't stay alone. The tracking app showed him at Natalie's actual apartment, the one she'd claimed to have given up after the divorce that never happened. By morning, their perfect affair was already cracking. Without the thrill of secrecy, without the domestic comfort of my home, reality set in. Marcus called 17 times, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. First denial, then anger, then bargaining, the grief stages of a man realizing what he'd lost. Monday morning arrived with Uncle Tony and 3 movers at 7 sharp. True to Aunt Ruth's word, they packed Marcus's belongings with military efficiency. Only his clothes, personal items, and things owned before our marriage were taken. The art he'd collected during our marriage stayed community property to be divided by courts. His home office was stripped of personal effects, but professional items remained technically belonging to his firm. By noon, 15 years of physical presence had been erased. Emma came home from school early, claiming stomach pain that was clearly emotional. We sat on her bed while she asked careful questions mature beyond 12 years. Why did Dad leave? Why did Aunt Natalie go too? Were they together now? Would we be okay? I answered honestly within age-appropriate boundaries. Sometimes adults made selfish choices that hurt others. Sometimes people we trusted disappointed us. But we were strong, we had family support, and we would absolutely be okay. She cried then, not for the father she'd lost, but for the aunt she'd trusted. Ryan's reaction was different, quieter, artistic. He drew, constantly processing through images what words couldn't capture. One drawing showed our house with a hole where Marcus should be, another showed Natalie with devil horns that he quickly erased, guilty about the anger. His teacher called, concerned about his withdrawal but understanding given circumstances. The school counselor made herself available, having dealt with similar situations. The infrastructure of support expanded beyond family to community. Marcus's professional life imploded within 48 hours. Someone, probably Uncle Tony, who had connections everywhere, had informed his partners about the scandal. Adultery. With a sister-in-law. Financial fraud. The ugly details spread through their conservative firm like wildfire. His main client, a Catholic hospital system, pulled their contract immediately. 2 other clients followed, unwilling to be associated with such moral failure. His partners called an emergency meeting discussing whether his actions constituted conduct unbecoming enough for dismissal. Natalie fared no better. Her interior design business, built on referrals and reputation, crumbled when word spread. Clients canceled contracts, unwilling to trust someone who'd betrayed family so thoroughly. Her Instagram, where she'd showcased projects, filled with comments calling her a homewrecker, a sister betrayer, worse. She made her account private, then deleted it entirely, but screenshots had already been captured and shared. The court of public opinion convicted her more harshly than any legal system could. I returned to the workforce with surprising ease. My old colleague Sandra, now a VP at a competing firm, had heard about an opening for a marketing director. My interview was essentially a formality, my reputation intact despite my absence. The salary was generous, the hours flexible, the company understanding about single mother responsibilities. Starting immediately wasn't just financial necessity, but therapeutic, reclaiming the professional identity I'd sacrificed. The first day back, wearing a suit that still fit perfectly, I felt more myself than I had in years. Therapy with Dr. Kim twice weekly helped process the trauma logically. She specialized in betrayal trauma, understanding the unique wound of double betrayal from spouse and sibling. We worked through anger, grief, and strangely relief. The marriage had been dying slowly, I realized, suffocated by complacency and routine. The affair was devastating but also liberating, freeing me from a relationship that had become performance rather than partnership. Dr. Kim helped me see that healing wasn't about forgetting but integrating the experience into a stronger narrative. The children started their own therapy with Dr. Patterson, the specialist Aunt Ruth had contacted. Through play therapy with Ryan and talk therapy with Emma, they processed their confusion and anger. Emma admitted she'd suspected something was wrong, had seen her father and aunt exchanging looks that made her uncomfortable. Ryan revealed he'd been drawing our family differently for months, unconsciously sensing the shift. Their resilience amazed me, adapting to our new normal with flexibility that adults rarely managed. 2 weeks after the revelation, James provided an update that surprised no one. Marcus and Natalie's relationship was disintegrating rapidly. Without the excitement of an affair faced with real-world consequences, their grand love story became mundane desperation. The apartment Marcus had put a deposit on fell through when the landlord learned about his situation. Natalie's still legal husband had emerged demanding his share of her business assets in their now active divorce proceedings. They were trapped together by mutual destruction, but the passion had curdled into resentment. Marcus made one pathetic attempt at reconciliation, arriving at the house with flowers and tears. The security cameras Aunt Ruth had installed captured everything as I refused to open the door. He stood on the porch for an hour, alternating between apologies and accusations, claiming Natalie had seduced him, that he'd been weak but loved me. The neighbors watched from windows the suburban scandal providing entertainment. Eventually, the police arrived, called by concerned citizens about a disturbance. He left before they could serve the restraining order Anthony had filed. Diana organized what she called divorce recovery nights, gathering her divorced friends to provide wisdom and wine. These women, all professionally successful, all survivors of marital betrayal, became an unexpected sisterhood. They shared lawyers' numbers, therapists' contacts, and most importantly, proof that life after betrayal could be extraordinary. One had started a $1 million business post-divorce. Another had found love with someone who actually deserved her. Their stories weren't fairy tales, but warrior tales, women who'd rebuilt rather than just recovered. Financial forensics revealed more than Anthony had initially discovered. Marcus had been planning his exit for 8 months, not the 3 months the emails showed. He'd consulted with a divorce attorney himself, strategizing how to minimize losses. The affair with Natalie had been his exit strategy, ensuring he wouldn't be alone when he left. But he'd miscalculated, assuming I'd accept the situation quietly to avoid scandal. He'd never imagined I'd burn everything down publicly, rather than accept private humiliation. 3 months after that horrible phone call, our divorce was finalized. The judge, a woman who'd clearly seen too many cases like ours, awarded me primary custody. The house 70% of liquid assets and substantial alimony. Marcus's financial fraud and documented affair with my sister influenced her decision significantly. He stood in court, diminished, his architect's confidence replaced with defeat. Natalie sat in the gallery, their relationship already over, but bound by mutual destruction to maintain appearances. The children adapted to our new schedule, spending alternate weekends with Marcus in his small apartment. They returned from visits quiet and clingy, preferring our stable home to his chaos. Emma mentioned Natalie had been there once, crying and fighting with Dad. Ryan said the apartment was sad. No art on the walls, no feeling of home. Their father was trying, but children sense authenticity, and his efforts felt forced, guilty rather than genuine. Unexpectedly, I met someone, Dr. Patterson's brother, William, a widowed professor, who understood loss and betrayal differently but deeply. We met at a school function, both there for our children, both navigating single parenthood. Coffee turned into dinner, turned into careful courtship that prioritized our children's comfort. He was nothing like Marcus, quiet, where Marcus was loud, thoughtful, where Marcus was impulsive, genuine, where Marcus had become performance. We took things slowly, both too scarred to rush, but hope grew despite ourselves. 6 months after that phone call shattered my world, I was unrecognizable from the woman who'd answered it. Professionally successful again, financially independent, surrounded by chosen family who'd proven their loyalty through crisis. The children were healing therapy, helping them process and grow. Even the house felt different, redecorated to erase Marcus's presence, filled with new memories that didn't include betrayal. Marcus's life had taken an opposite trajectory. His partnership at the firm was dissolved, his clients gone, his reputation destroyed. He worked now as a contractor for a small firm, his name too toxic for prestigious projects. Natalie had moved to Seattle, fleeing the scandal, trying to restart where nobody knew her story. Their great love affair had lasted exactly as long as it took for consequences to arrive. Without the foundation of trust and respect, passion alone couldn't support the weight of real life. A letter arrived from Natalie on a random Tuesday forwarded through my lawyer. 6 pages of apology, self-pity, and attempted explanation. She wrote about childhood resentments. I'd never known existed jealousy that had festered for decades, the way Marcus had pursued her, not the reverse. She claimed temporary insanity, midlife crisis trauma from her own failed marriage. Every sentence was an excuse dressed as an apology, responsibility deflected rather than accepted. I read it once, then filed it with the divorce papers, evidence of a person who still didn't understand what she'd done. My parents had aged through this crisis, my mother especially. The daughter she'd raised, loved, trusted, had betrayed not just me but the entire family structure. She blamed herself for not seeing it, for enabling Natalie's victim mentality, for praising Marcus so highly. I assured her repeatedly that betrayal was the betrayer's choice alone, but maternal guilt was a powerful force. My father was simpler in his grief, his daughter dead to him, mourned but not missed. 1 year after that phone call, I sat in my office at the marketing firm where I was now senior director, looking at the life I'd rebuilt from ashes. The corner office had a view of the lake, bright with October sun. Photos on my desk showed Emma at 14, growing beautiful and strong, Ryan at 12, artistic and sensitive but resilient. A small photo of William and me at a faculty dinner, cautious smiles but genuine affection. The wedding ring I'd worn for 15 years sat in a jewelry box at home, replaced by a simple band I'd bought myself, a reminder of my own commitment to my worth. The children had found their new normal, excelling in ways they hadn't before. Emma made swim team captain, her dedication intensified by using physical activity to process emotion. Ryan's art had evolved, darker but more sophisticated, earning recognition in a state competition for young artists. They spent time with their father but lived with me, choosing stability over the chaos that still surrounded Marcus. He'd tried to poison them against me initially, but children are observant, and they'd seen who'd destroyed their family. William and I had progressed to something deeper than either expected. His daughter and my children had formed their own bonds, creating a blended family possibility neither of us had imagined. He understood that trust would take years to fully rebuild, that my betrayal trauma would always be part of me. But he also understood that broken things could be beautiful, like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold, the damage becoming part of the beauty, rather than something to hide. Marcus had attempted contact recently, not for reconciliation, but for nostalgia. He was in therapy now, he claimed, understanding his narcissism and selfishness. He wanted to apologize properly, to explain without excusing, to maybe find friendship eventually for the children's sake. I'd listened to his voicemail once, then deleted it. Some bridges once burned provided better service as ash fertilizing new growth, rather than rebuilt for crossing. The extended family had reorganized around Natalie's absence. Holiday gatherings continued fuller somehow, without the toxic element. New traditions emerged stronger for having survived crisis. Uncle Tony had become a grandfather figure to my children, teaching them strength and integrity. Aunt Ruth was my closest confidant. Her harsh honesty exactly what I needed. Even James and I had healed our relationship, bonded through crisis, in ways peace never could have managed. I'd received word through legal channels that Natalie's divorce was finalized, her ex-husband having taken her for everything in light of her admitted infidelity. She was truly alone now in Seattle, working retail while trying to rebuild her design business. Part of me, a very small part, felt pity, but mostly I felt nothing the opposite of love, being indifference, not hate. She'd made her choices, and consequences were simply justice delayed, not cruelty. The business thrived under my direction, my personal experience with betrayal actually improving my professional instincts. I could spot deception in proposals, manipulation in negotiations, understanding that people showed you who they were if you actually looked. My team respected my directness, my refusal to accept less than honesty. The very traits that Marcus had called cold and controlling were actually discernment and standards valuable in business and life. Emma asked me one evening if I'd ever forgive her father and aunt. I told her forgiveness was complicated, that it didn't mean accepting or forgetting, but rather releasing the poison of anger so it didn't infect everything else. I'd forgiven them for my own peace, but forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. Some actions broke things permanently, and that was okay. We could love the memories of who they used to be while protecting ourselves from who they'd become. Ryan had drawn a new family portrait, one that captured our evolution perfectly. William and his daughter were included, but slightly separate, honoring our careful blending. Marcus appeared in the background, present but distant, acknowledging reality without bitterness. Natalie was absent entirely, her existence erased from his artistic interpretation. But the center was strong, Emma, Ryan, and me, closer than before, forged stronger through survival. He'd titled it, After the Storm, understanding that destruction sometimes preceded necessary reconstruction. The year had taught me lessons I'd never wanted to learn. That family could betray worse than strangers. That marriage could be performance hiding decay. That children were resilient beyond imagination. That starting over at 40 was terrifying but possible. That professional identity mattered more than I'd admitted. That real friends revealed themselves in crisis. That betrayal could be a gift if it freed you from false life. That strength existed in reserves you'd never know without testing. But the most important lesson was about trust, not in others, but in myself. I'd trusted my instincts that morning when I'd recognized Natalie's voice. Trusted my intelligence to gather evidence. Trusted my courage to expose them publicly. Trusted my resilience to rebuild. Trusted my worth to demand better. The betrayal had shattered my trust in them but reinforced my trust in myself, and that was the ultimate victory. Looking back at that morning when the phone rang, when Natalie's voice destroyed my carefully constructed world, I understood it wasn't destruction, but revelation. The life I'd been living was already broken, held together by denial and routine. The affair simply revealed the cracks that had been spreading for years. In trying to destroy me, they'd actually freed me. Their betrayal was my liberation, though neither they nor I had understood that in the moment. The phone on my desk rang, pulling me from reflection. It was William confirming dinner plans, his daughter excited about Emma teaching her to swim. Simple, normal, genuine interaction without subterfuge or manipulation. I confirmed happily, already imagining the evening, the laughter, the easy conversation, the building of something real on foundation of truth rather than pretense. This was what love actually looked like. Not grand passion that justified destruction, but quiet building of trust through consistent action. As I prepared to leave the office, my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. She'd made the state swim team, her hard work recognized. Ryan had sent a photo of his latest drawing, winning another competition. These were my victories now, my children's successes, my professional achievements, my carefully rebuilt life. Marcus and Natalie had taken my marriage and my sister, but they'd given me something more valuable, which was myself, complete and sufficient, no longer defined by roles of wife or sister, but simply as myself. The sun set over the lake as I drove home, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A year ago, I'd have been rushing to have dinner ready for Marcus, anxious about his mood, performing the perfect wife role. Now I was heading to a home that was purely mine, children, who were thriving a future that was uncertain but honest. The woman who'd answered that phone no longer existed. In her place stood someone harder but wiser, scarred, but stronger, betrayed, but not broken. I pulled into my driveway, our driveway, mine and my children's. The house looked different now, repainted, reorganized, renewed. Emma's bike lay carelessly on the lawn, Ryan's art supplies scattered on the porch. Signs of life lived authentically, rather than performed perfectly. Inside homework would need supervision, dinner would need cooking, ordinary life would continue. But it was real life now, without secrets or lies, without looking over my shoulder, without wondering what deception lurked beneath smooth surfaces. The greatest revenge I'd learned wasn't dramatic confrontation or public humiliation, though those had their place. It was living well afterward, thriving despite the attempt to destroy you, building something better from ruins. Every success, every moment of joy, every achievement was a testament to survival. Marcus and Natalie had to live with their choices with the knowledge that their betrayal had ultimately improved my life. They were stuck in the consequences while I'd moved into consequences, transformed into opportunities. As I entered my home, Emma rushed to hug me, excited about her swim team achievement. Ryan showed me his winning artwork, proud and seeking approval. This was what mattered, these authentic moments, these real relationships, this life built on truth rather than deception. The phone call that had started this journey seemed like a lifetime ago, a different woman's story. But it was my story, my journey from betrayal to triumph, from deception to truth, from performance to authenticity. That woman's whispered, "I love you" on my husband's phone had been meant to destroy. Instead, it had revealed freed and ultimately empowered. Natalie's voice, familiar and treacherous, had been the catalyst for transformation I'd never known I'd needed. In trying to steal my life, she'd forced me to build a better one. In betraying my trust, she'd taught me to trust myself. In destroying my marriage, she'd freed me to find real love. Sometimes the worst things that happen become the best things in disguise, betrayal transforming into blessing through survival and growth. The evening settled around us, homework at the kitchen table, dinner preparations, normal life. That was extraordinary in its honesty. William would arrive soon with his daughter, our careful blend continuing. But for now, it was just us three, the survivors, the core that had held when everything else had shattered. We'd been broken, but were healing, wounded, but getting stronger, betrayed, but not defeated. This was our victory, quiet and daily and real. What would you do if you recognized the voice on your husband's phone as your own sister's? Would you have had the strength to expose them both so publicly? Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? Share your own story of survival and transformation in the comments below. If this story resonated with your own experience of betrayal and rebuilding, please hit like and subscribe. Share this video with anyone who needs to know that betrayal doesn't have to be the end, but can become a new beginning. Thank you for joining me on this journey from that shocking phone call to where I stand today, stronger and more authentic than ever before. Remember that sometimes the most painful endings are just beautiful beginnings wearing disguises. Trust yourself, value your worth, and never accept less than complete honesty in your relationships. Until next time, this is Valentina reminding you that survival isn't just possible, it's the first step toward thriving.